Okay, got it. I'm being recorded. Okay. All right, ready?
Yes,
Here we
sir.
go. Okay, so breaking news. Just got this out over the wire here. The Milwaukee Bucks have actually sent some strippers to James Harden's house to say thank you for pulling his hamstring in round 2 of the playoffs and allowing them to win a championship. And they're also telling him, don't rush your recovery. If you don't want to come back next year, hey, just sit it out. Take some time off. You've had a really great career. You don't need to rush it. Let's see. They also sent some the Bucks. They also sent some size 18 sneakers to Kevin Durant's house because he actually should wear 17, but he prefers to wear 18. And because he was wearing 18, his foot was on the 3-point line in Game 7, which prevented the Nets from beating the Bucks and eliminating them in the second round.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Also, and just closing one last piece of breaking news. Space Jam, the what is it called? Space Jam: A New Legacy is apparently really terrible, and it provides further proof that LeBron no clutch gene. So Jordan will always be better, even on the silver screen. So
for all of you Skip Bayless fans out there,
pretty much, yeah.
No, that's right. No clutch gene, or he just, but Giannis just picked it up,
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, I don't want to be a hater because actually I was being a hater on Tuesday night when the Bucks won the championship. But
yeah, so
I'm goofing around.
Let's set this up. So yeah, we're Clark and I are watching the game. We're watching game 5? Game 5, yeah. You had a heart attack. We're watching the game. We're texting, like we do. We're both, both NBA fans. Full disclosure here, we're from, we live in South Florida, so we are Miami Heat fans. But
yeah, so really, we don't have a dog in this fight, and I really shouldn't have had any rooting interest. But since I had to pick something to root for, I guess.
Right. So we both picked, the Phoenix Suns. We both thought the Phoenix Suns would win. Just based on watching the playoffs. Honestly, for me, it was just a matter of I think the Western Conference is just a lot better than the Eastern Conference, and so I think I thought Phoenix was the better team, and based on what we had seen from Milwaukee, I mean, it looked like they were going to lose to Brooklyn, and then there were a lot of questions in the Atlanta series.
Well, but by the way, just before everybody forgets, I mean, before the finals started, I said multiple times I don't think he's going to play in the finals because that injury was bad. That knee hyperextension in Game 4 against Atlanta in the Eastern Conference Finals. That was, I mean, I didn't think he was going to play, and if he did play, I didn't think it would be till later in the series. So then, before the game, they're like, he's upgraded to questionable. I'm like, really? And then he goes out there and plays game. I'm like, what the hell? I mean, I thought they would have won anyway, but I was kind of even more convinced if Giannis was going to miss 2 or 3 games. So,
yeah, it did not look good. As I've heard in several places, his leg looked like a flamingo. It was not.
Yeah, that's true.
Did not look good at all. So, we're texting Game 5, and Milwaukee's made a comeback in the series, and I thought Game 4 was kind of a turning point. That was where I kind of expected Phoenix to kind of take control, and they weren't able to win.
They probably should have, if not for Devin Booker getting in foul trouble.
Right. So it was one of those games that could have gone either way. And so, we're texting Game 5, and Clark is getting progressively upset that the Phoenix Suns might lose this game. And he's just, I can't, he's going nuclear. I'm not watching the NBA anymore. I'll tune in next year.
I said I'm not going to watch Game 6, okay?
Oh, okay.
Which was ridiculous. Yeah, but no, I said I can't watch Game 6. This is ridiculous. They're blowing, because at that point, because I'm trying to remember. So Game 5, okay, Booker scored 40 in Game 4, and then he went off for 40 in Game 5.
Right.
And what? Okay, now I'm remembering this. So Game 5 was the one where Phoenix was they're in the lead for most of the game, I think, and then you get to the middle of the fourth quarter, and it's like, okay, Phoenix, if you just make a run, you're going to win this game. And Milwaukee kept taking shots and missing them. I mean, they missed so many shots. I think, Pat Connaughton missed shots. I think Drew Holiday missed some shots like that, and no one was really capitalizing on anything. And I mean, Chris Paul played better than he did in game 4. We didn't play, all that great. It's just they couldn't make any plays. And then that was the game with the block, right?
Correct.
They ran a screen and roll with Booker and Ayton, which was working the whole game. And then Ayton's rolling to the basket. Booker drives in, tries to toss it up for a layup or for a dunk, an alley-oop. And Giannis proceeds to go from basically the front of the top, well, not the top of the key, but like sort of in the
free throw line,
like just past the free throw line to the other, like in a diagonal motion across to the other side of the paint and blocks the dunk, which
one
basically
of the greatest blocks ever.
Yeah. So, so that sort of secured the game. So Milwaukee, they made that play obviously, but I just felt like Phoenix should have won. I feel like they were in position. They just needed to make a few plays and they didn't do it. So yeah, looking back now, I think at the time I was saying, oh, they're choking. No, they didn't choke. That was ridiculous. It was there. They just needed to go. They just needed to make some plays and they didn't do it. So, and Milwaukee didn't really either, until, they made a few shots at the end. So.
Right. Yeah. So, Clark is losing his mind over,
actually, I'll go. You know what? Let me go back to the text. I'll go back to the text. Let me find it. But
that's what I was trying to look up.
Yeah, I was really pissed. And put it this way, I'm not a Phoenix Suns fan, but I was just pissed off that I was wrong. Which every now and then I get like that. Like the last time I feel like I really got like that was 2007. When the Colts were playing the Patriots, the year the Patriots went undefeated, and the Colts were ahead in the game like 20-10, and they blew the lead and they lost the game. And I was really pissed off because I'm like, I called it. I knew they were going to lose, and of course I was wrong. So
Yeah, so it's a lot of good Lord, the Suns can't get a stop. The Bucks are better. This is what you get when you blow a game. I don't want to watch any more of this crap. Very, very, and honestly, I'm sitting in front of my TV and I'm like, why is he so upset about this? It's the Bucks, for Christ's sake. So this is what I'm leading to here is that Clark he said, I don't know how many times that he doesn't like the Bucks. And listen, the Bucks they leave something to be desired. Okay. Obviously, if you're a Bucks fan, completely understand. That's your team. You love them. I have no problem with that. But, if you like 90s basketball, the Bucks remind you of 90s basketball because there's a lot of missed shots. There's a lot of, bad offense, a lot of,
for all you guys who say like you love 90s basketball, really go back on YouTube and watch some of those games. Oh my, I mean, like it's you kind of forget because you watched it at the time and that's just how basketball was, but you go back and watch, you're like, this is a classic game. Nobody can hit a shot. What the,
yes,
like
exactly.
Like I remember watching the Lakers play Game 7, the Lakers and the Trailblazers, right? When Shaq and Kobe won the first championship. Like the end of that game, you're like, oh, this is a classic game. And I don't think I watched that at the time. And then I'm watching it and it's like, first of all, the score was like 80 something to 70 something. Like that was the final score. And it's just like, there's a few minute stretch there where it's just people are shooting bricks. It's just like, it's not how you remember it, but it's not as good as you remember. So.
Yeah, it's all we had at the time. So of course we enjoyed it, but we didn't know any better. So anyway, so my point of that is that Clark, I want to give you a few minutes here. You don't like the Bucks, so I'm going to give you the floor to explain your Bucks hate.
I've since changed my position. I was being ridiculous. I got over it. The Bucks they made plays when they needed to. Things could have gone differently this postseason, but you could say that just pretty much about any postseason. So, look, Giannis is really great. I mean, we'll talk about Giannis later, but Giannis, I think, we could talk about if he's the best player in the league or not. I don't know. That's kind of, I don't really care, but he's the most physically dominating player in the league. And I don't think it's close. I don't think there's anybody who you could say is more physically dominating than him. And I think once he basically realized that he was physically dominant, then, the series kind of shifted because Phoenix could not do. I mean, to say Phoenix could not do anything about him is kind of ridiculous. Can anybody else in the league do anything about him? I mean, maybe Anthony Davis, maybe, I don't know, but so yeah, I was being ridiculous at the time, but no. And the Bucks are, do I really, really enjoy watching them? Not really. I mean, Giannis is kind of fun to watch because he's so dominating everybody else. But, Middleton, I got to give him credit. That guy just makes shots. He made a bunch of big shots this whole playoffs. So, and it's not like he just makes open threes. He makes contested fadeaway jump shots in big playoff games. So, I got to give him credit. He's really good. I thought Phoenix could win, and Phoenix could have won the series. But I just think I think my main kind of takeaway was just basically over the course of the series, the Bucks proved to be a really difficult matchup for the Suns. Even though again, the Suns could have won the series, but it just, the size, and plus, we've talked about this, when you have one of your best players is small, like Chris Paul is, it just becomes very difficult, so.
Yeah, I think that I would agree. I think that over the course of 6 games, the Milwaukee kind of wore them down, and I think that the Bucks dragged the Suns into the game that the Bucks wanted to play.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of looking. I mean, it's funny because after game, when did Saric get hurt? Was it game 1 or game?
I think it was game 2, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was on vacation. I was at a friend's house watching the game, and he got hurt. I think I texted you like, that might be a big deal, and you were kind of like, I don't really know, but no, I think that did end up being a pretty big deal because they had to play 8 more minutes because they just didn't. That's what's so funny. Like James Jones, everybody's been giving James Jones all this credit. What is he, the GM for Phoenix?
Yes.
Yeah. So they've been giving him all this credit, and yeah, that's fine. But I mean, they didn't have anybody really to back up Ayton. So that came back to bite them.
Yeah, I think one of the hallmarks of a championship team is that you get better as the playoffs go on and as the series goes on. And the Bucks got better in the series, and I don't feel like Phoenix did. Granted,
Phoenix I think you could maybe say Phoenix kind of peaked in game 1 of the finals.
Right.
Because I think, I don't know, Booker was kind of inconsistent, but again, I have to be careful banging on Devin Booker because, he was inconsistent. It's the first time he's been in the playoffs, and he scored 40 points twice in the finals. He's really good. He, obviously he'll get better as he gets more experience. So it's hard. That's the other thing. I'm trying, as much as I was banging on the Bucks, I can't, I can criticize Phoenix for certain things, and they deserve criticism for some things, but
right.
I mean, the Bucks made the plays, they won the game. So it's not like there was some sort of blown call or, not like when the Raptors were playing the Warriors and Kevin Durant's not in the game. It's like, okay, well, I feel like if Kevin Durant was in the game, the Raptors would have lost. No, it's just the Bucks came out and they played better. So that's how it goes.
Yeah, and I think there was a debate at the beginning of the series who would be the best player in the series, Giannis or Chris Paul. And by about game 2, it was obvious Giannis was the best player in the series, and it wasn't even
right.
And so when you, in the history of the NBA, when you have the best player in a series, unless it's like the Warriors versus the Cavaliers, where LeBron might be the best player, but it's so overwhelming.
If you have multiple Hall of Famers on the same team, then it's
right. And that's it's an exception. With rare exception, if you have the best player in the series, you win. So
I mean, that's basically
the history of the NBA there.
Yeah.
But so I think it's great for both those teams to make it to the finals. I think it's my personal opinion, I think Giannis was basically a top 5 player in the league before this, and now I think he's kind of cemented it as he's one of the best players in the league. And if you take into account, you could make the argument all around, right? If you use defense and offense, that he's the best player.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, to me that whole thing gets kind of like you end up splitting hairs because it's like, oh, you're putting this guy number one over. It's like, I mean, to say it's weird because like you can say Kevin Durant's more skilled offensively than Giannis, but you're just saying that he's more skilled because he's a shooter. It's not that Giannis isn't skilled. I mean, him driving to the basket, the fact that he's 6'11" and he can drive to the basket the way he can and cover that kind of ground. And then, he's like Euro stepping and doing all this other stuff, So yeah, he's incredibly skilled. And then it's kind of a question of, it's weird because it's almost like, should he try to be a better shooter or should he just physically dominate everybody like this? Because if he physically dominates people like this and then he just gets some shooting around him, then I don't know what the hell you're supposed to do. But anyway, we can go more into that like later. Yeah, let's do. I thought this was interesting because I started writing notes on this and then I just went through all this stuff. I think we should kind of go through the playoffs, like kind of round by round, not every single series because every series was not that interesting. But like we're not going to talk about the Wizards playing the. I don't even remember who the hell they played.
The Wizards playing. If you can't remember the series, then it's probably not worth talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's see. The other thing I just think is interesting is kind of this is like the end of like this really weird 2 years where 2020 starts normal and then it stops because of COVID, and then there's 4 months off and then there's the bubble and then there's like 2 months off and then the next season starts and it's a 72 game season. It's this condensed thing and you start off with really no fans and then slowly you start getting more fans in the arenas until you get to the playoffs and it's full arenas and Madison Square Garden going crazy and whatever game that was when they played Atlanta. So let's see. So if we kind of go back, it's interesting just because you go through, you think about some of the different narratives people might have had at the beginning of the year and how it compares to now. So like things start off, the Lakers won the championship last year. They start off like 21-6 and they look really, really good. I mean, they're not exactly the same team as last year. They made some changes, whatever, but they look really good. And then, as would obviously happen numerous times, people get hurt. So LeBron gets hurt, Anthony Davis gets hurt, and they're out for, I don't remember what it was. Like AD was out for like 6 weeks.
Well, like, longer than that. I think he was out from February until the end of the regular season.
Yeah, LeBron was out a month or more. Yeah, he might have been more than that. Yeah.
He probably was about 6 weeks.
Yeah. So that kind of, and it's crazy because he was kind of, people were like, LeBron could win another MVP and then, throw that out the window. So, and then of course the other thing, Brooklyn makes a trade for James Harden and, but then because of various injuries to all three of them, they only end up playing something like 8 games together the entire year, which is odd, which I think kind of contributed to people like, I don't know about this because I didn't know about this team either. And then they started kind of playing well. And I was like, all right, maybe they actually can, even though they're terrible at defense. And then it's so funny. The Clippers literally, it felt like numerous times went from one end of the spectrum to the other where we're like, I don't know what the hell to do with this team. Like, and then we're like, this team's actually really good. And then what the hell's going on now? I don't understand. Like, because remember at the end of the year, we're all like, yeah, they're talented, but they're really bad at the end of games. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on. So you get into the playoffs, you're like, I don't really know what the hell to make of this team.
They're the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde team.
I mean, just throughout the season, it's just crazy, and plus, and then of course, you remember Kawhi does the load management thing. So he's missing a bunch of games. Paul George missed some games too. So it's, and then of course, Denver, Jamal Murray gets injured. So that kind of, they look pretty good. That kind of throws a wrench into that. And then the playoffs start and then we're kind of like, all right, maybe things are going to kind of get back to some sense of normalcy, right? Like Brooklyn destroys the Celtics because the Celtics just are no match for them because they got, the Brooklyn has all 3 guys playing. So that happens. And then the Lakers, they lose game 1 against Phoenix, but then they win the next 2. AD looks really good. And we're kind of like, all right, I think LeBron's, I mean, I even said this at the time, LeBron's probably going to figure this out by the conference finals. He'll be back to himself and, they'll probably have a chance to get to the finals. But of course, no, Anthony Davis pulls his groin in game 4. And then the Suns proceed to win like 9 games in a row. They eliminate the Lakers, and then what's crazy about the Suns is basically by game 4 against Denver, because they played Denver in the next round, you're thinking, okay, and Chris Paul scored like 40 points or something. And then he's hugging Monty Williams at the end of the game. And it's kind of like, you know what? I think everything's going to shake out for the Suns. Things are going to work. And Chris Paul gets COVID and he's out for the next 2 games in the next series. So literally the whole playoffs, you go from, well, I think this is how things are going to work. Yeah, this is good. And somebody gets hurt or something else happens, So,
right. And even with Chris Paul out, they win those first 2 games, which is,
yeah. Well, no. And the other thing that's crazy is like because Chris Paul dealt with a bunch of injuries over the course of the playoffs. I mean, like in the Lakers series, he injured his shoulder in game 1, and then he wasn't that good for like the middle of the series. By the end of the series, he got back to himself. And then with Denver, when he played Denver, he was really good. So, and then, the Clippers, I mean, it's really funny. You look back at how they went through the playoffs. Like they get down to Dallas 0-2, they lose both their home games, and you're like, oh, they're done. And like you're watching sports analysis shows, everybody said they're done. They're like, oh yeah, it's over, and then game 3 is in Dallas, and Dallas starts off, they hit a bunch of threes and stuff. They went up like 29-10 or 29-8 or something like that. And you're thinking, oh my God, they're about to get swept. Like who's Steve Ballmer going to fire, who's going to get kicked off the team or whatever. But of course they come back, they look, Paul George is really consistent. He scored like 20 points, like several games in a row, like from like the middle of the first round until like the conference finals, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like if you didn't get pushed to the brink in this playoffs, then you weren't really in it. You know what I mean? Like Milwaukee got pushed to the brink against Brooklyn. It looked like they were in serious trouble when Giannis got hurt against Atlanta. It looked like, the Hawks were, fired up, young team that looked like they were ready to take them down. And then it looked like Milwaukee was in trouble. It looked like Milwaukee was about to lose to Phoenix. And, it's like Phoenix looked like they were about to lose to the Lakers. So it's just kind of funny. Like you get a few games go differently in this playoffs, you have a completely different result.
Yeah.
It's like you literally you shake up an 8 ball and you get a different response every time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this playoffs was, which honestly, as a TV viewer, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So
well then it's so funny because you go from games 1 and 2 of Dallas when Dallas was playing the Clippers, and Luka is just destroying everybody. Like he's destroying Patrick Beverly, and what is he? He's like, you're too fucking small, or whatever the hell he's saying. Like he'd drive to the basket and get it in, like too fucking small. This guy can't guard me, And then Patrick Beverly would obviously play a bigger role in, because I mean the next series he didn't really, the Clippers end up winning the first round series obviously, but the next series Patrick Beverly barely played, and then he actually played a lot in the conference finals against Phoenix. But yeah, so you kind of, the Clippers Dallas series winds on and you kind of like, all right, Dallas, you know what, they're not that good. Outside of Luka, they don't really have anything. So so we're like, all right, I think the Clippers, they're good, but can they really win a championship? I don't know, because that series was just kind of up and down. And then of course the next round they go down 0-2 to Utah, and it's like, well, what the, But granted, everybody didn't kind of lose hope there,
And it looked like it looked like the Clipper. Kawhi gets hurt. It looks like there's no way they're going to beat Utah. Utah's up 25 points in Game 6. You're like, this is done. They're not. They look like they were dead to rights, and they come back and win. Like you can't,
Yeah. Well, no, and then it was basically, I mean, like it was so crazy because they get down 0-2, and then the Clippers come back, they win the next 2 games, and like the game 4, like the Clippers look really good, and they were beating them badly, and then Kawhi, he's running down the floor, and he's he's hopping around because his knee looks messed up, and we're kind of like, all right, that didn't look that bad, because I think he stayed in the game a little bit. So people are like, all right, he'll probably be back, whatever. But at the same time, you're like, no Kawhi, and it's like he's probably not coming back for the rest of the series. You're like, oh, I think they're kind of done. I mean, what are you going to rely on? Paul George, who then proceeds to go out and have the game of his life. He scores like 37 points, and they win that one. And then the crazy game 6 where they were up 25 in the first half and they still lose.
Terrence Mann.
Yeah,
Terrence Mann.
Terrence Mann. That's what everybody totally forgets about Terrence Mann. And then of course, Rudy Gobert was basically getting torched because he couldn't, he's not that athletic in terms of moving around toward the 3-point line. So what we get to the conference finals. We got Phoenix playing the Clippers.
Yep.
And remember, Chris Paul was out with COVID. And then the Eastern Conference, you get the Bucks Nets series, which we kind of thought, I think the Bucks could win this series, but we were kind of like, I don't know if they can, do enough to stop James Harden and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Well, wouldn't you know it? With 43 seconds into game 1, James Harden pulls his hamstring. So at that point we're like, okay, but then, I mean, we watched game 1, every minute of game 1, basically. I mean, Brooklyn was in control the entire way. I don't think Milwaukee led in that game.
Well,
then game 2.
I would be really interested to know, has anybody won the championship and lost one of their playoff games by 50? I mean,
yeah, that's right. Because game 2,
has anyone ever done that? Because it's inexplicable.
It's so crazy that the Bucks ended up winning the championship, because you go back to that and you're like, they were down 2-0 and people were like, it's over. Like, they're going to lose. Budenholzer's probably going to get fired. Like, what, they gave up all this stuff for Drew Holiday and they're going to lose in the second round, Game 3 was kind of it was kind of a low scoring game. Kevin Durant had like he was ridiculous. I don't remember how many points he scored. I mean, at one point he scored like 19 points in the third quarter or something like that, or the fourth quarter. But Milwaukee kept it close. And then like one of the last plays of the game, I think Kevin Durant was just worn out because he's standing over in the corner and they inbound the ball to Bruce Brown. And he's like, I remember listening to Bill Simmons' podcast where he goes, yeah, Bruce Brown gets the ball and is like, don't worry, Kevin, I got this. And he drives down the lane to try to score. And of course he doesn't score because, he's Bruce Brown. So yeah, they lose that game. And then it's kind of like, yeah, but you know what? I mean, Brooklyn, they're the better team. Like, they're going to win, So we get into game 4 and then Kyrie Irving, screws up his ankle. And it's like, of course, more injuries. And then, basically it's like the rest of the series kind of pinballs back and forth because, Steve Nash, I guess he learned this from Mike D'Antoni, because he just started playing Kevin Durant like basically every minute of every game from game 5 to game 7, which I don't know. You could say that maybe that was a bad idea, but I don't know what the hell else he was going to do. I mean, who else did he have on that team?
Yeah, so it was crazy because Brooklyn wins game 5 somehow, even though it's, it looks like there's a close game. There's no way. And it felt like Milwaukee really blew an opportunity. But you're sitting there after the game and you're looking at it going, well, they can still win this series because Brooklyn was basically a one-man team. And, you're wondering how they're going to be able to win another game. And,
and then, Kevin
almost
Durant
did.
Yeah, Kevin Durant goes, scores like, I don't know, was it like 47 points, I think, in game 5? Like, he was just insane. So they win that game and you're thinking, all right, Brooklyn's got this, but Kevin Durant's exhausted. So game 6, they lose, and then you go to game 7, game 7 was awesome. That was one of the best games of the playoffs. And it's kind of, back and forth. And then what was it? The end of regulation, Kevin Durant pulls up, hits a shot, and it's like, yeah, but his foot was on the line, which, as I mentioned earlier, he's wearing size 18 shoes, I think, even though he's got size 17 feet, which his foot was a little bit longer, so it was on the line. So, and it's funny because you watch the play and like Durant makes the shot and then he's kind of pulling back and he knows that his foot was on the line. He's like, damn it, I meant to hit a 3 to win the game, because there would have been like something like 1 second left, I think, when he hit the shot. So anyway, so it's tied. It goes to overtime. Giannis hits a shot over Durant, and then Durant takes a 3 to try to win the game, and he airballs it because he's been playing almost every minute of the last like 3 games. So, you know,
Yeah, you could see in that series there, it looked like Brooklyn kind of ran out of gas. And you know what? Honestly, that's kind of what happened with Milwaukee in every series. Like they just kept going, and Milwaukee didn't run out of gas, and the other team kind of did. You can
yeah,
see it with Brooklyn. You could see it with Atlanta. You could see it with Phoenix. They just kind of outlasted everybody, and it had a lot to do with they were basically healthy. They didn't have,
yeah,
Giannis. Almost, it looked like Giannis was going to be injured, but he managed to come back and be himself.
yeah. So, yeah, and then the Bucks going to the conference finals. They're playing Atlanta, and I think that I think the thing with Milwaukee is we kept expecting them. We're like, well, if you're going to win a championship, then you should look like a championship team. But they, at no point did they really like there's points where they dominate teams, but a lot of times it's kind of like a series is like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then they just kind of pull it out in the end. So people don't. It's hard to like. You keep thinking like there's another gear they're going to get to, and they don't really, because they don't offensively. I guess they're just not as skilled, so they can't really like blow teams away, enough unless like against Phoenix. I just know they were more physically dominating, so it just kind of worked out that way. But you know, so yeah, it was kind of. I think I had like five. Yeah, basically like five takeaways from the playoffs. Is basically injuries changed everything. Well, put it this way: injuries eliminated a few possible outcomes that we kind of thought were going to happen.
Right.
I mean, if people didn't get hurt, then who knows? I mean, maybe the Lakers would have lost to somebody else in the playoffs. Maybe if they had to play the Clippers, they would have lost. Who knows? But it kind of they had eliminated them, and then the Clippers, like, I mean, they almost beat Phoenix, but that getting Kawhi hurt just kind of it's like, well, there's only so much they can do.
It
So
had it had a little bit of an NCAA tournament feel to it, where it's kind of, you get an upset over here and that changes the way the bracket looks. So you end up
yeah,
getting a different team than you expected. And it was kind of like that. It was kind of like every night you had to watch, because
yeah,
you didn't know, you didn't know what was going to happen. Even when it looked like, oh, well, this team probably is going to win. They ended up not winning.
yeah. Yeah, so it just yeah. Again, the other takeaway was basically what we knew what would happen, and then we didn't. Well, we know this is going to happen, but then it didn't. Which I guess you could say that maybe that happens in a lot of playoffs, but at the same time, like in the NBA, not really. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot
I
of playoffs you
mean,
enter and you kind of
you and
go,
I've, we've been watching the playoffs for 25 years. I mean, and
yeah,
I've never seen anything like this. Yes, injuries affect it all the time. That's true, but I've never seen it to this extent. This is
yeah,
beyond anything I'm accustomed
yeah. I mean that when Durant was injured with the Warriors, I mean that was one injury, and the Warriors still took the finals to 6 games. So it was kind of like, um, let's see. And then the other takeaway was kind of, the media, I think, and fans too, they tend to make they come up with these broad sweeping narratives about players based on a playoffs. And it's kind of, on some level, it's ridiculous because so many little things can happen. So like people are ripping on Chris Paul, and I'm just like, all right, I think we need to slow down. Like, I can, there was a lot of good stuff that he did in the playoffs. Let's not like totally write the guy off just because, he had a bad playoffs here, like you got to kind of slow down. And then like Milwaukee, yeah, Giannis is really good. And the Bucks, they made some plays and whatever, but I mean, a couple injuries and they might not even have made the finals. So you kind of have to, when you're judging players and teams, you kind of have to take all that into account and not overreact because, well, this team won a championship, so they're clearly better than everybody else. It's like, what else happened? Like, I need to kind of know the whole context. What was the other two other takeaways? Just what Chris Paul was able to do with the Suns team, just in the regular season and then throughout the playoffs, is ridiculous. I don't think enough people are talking about it. I mean, that team had never made the playoffs before. It was Chris Paul and Jay Crowder had playoff experience. That's it. So the fact that they, even when he wasn't on the floor, that speaks to, them, throughout the year, but it also speaks to coaching and everything else. But I mean, what they were able to do this year was just unbelievable. So it's hard for me to like say, well, you didn't win the finals, so I'm going to crush you now. Like, no, it's hard for me to do that. You know, and then the other thing was just Giannis is the most I said this before. Giannis is the most physically dominating player in the league, and that's probably something that I should have known earlier, because I'm just saying that based off what he did in the last few rounds of the playoffs. But I mean, if you just watch him play, it's clear that he's more physically dominating than just about everybody else.
Yeah,
So
I would say if you put, the most dominating physical player in the NBA as a championship belt, Giannis has now taken it from LeBron and Kawhi.
yeah,
It's just they're not quite at the same level
well, yeah,
anymore.
because I mean, and even when LeBron at his peak, I mean, he was physically dominating, but there's certain things Giannis does that I don't know that LeBron could do. I mean, maybe that's because he's, Giannis is like 3 inches taller, I think. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It does kind of look similar. Like LeBron will have the ball, down low in the paint near the basket, and he'll just power his way up and get the ball up to the basket and make a shot. So maybe it looks a little different because Giannis is a little taller, maybe. But yeah, I think it is kind of a similar thing.
Right. I think it used to be, if LeBron wanted to get to the basket, he could get to the basket anytime he wanted. And I think it's
that's fair.
It's a little more difficult now than it was. Giannis, he's getting the ball down low. If he gets the ball down low, same thing with LeBron. If he gets the ball down low also. But I just think that Giannis is 10 years younger, so it makes a difference. But yeah, I think in my lifetime, I think it's probably Giannis, LeBron, Kawhi, Russell Westbrook. Those are probably the best athletes that I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. You could say two-way athletes too, because,
right.
It's kind of like you see a progression with athletes where it's like LeBron, and then you get Giannis, who it's like, Giannis is doing chase down blocks that even maybe could LeBron have still done some of these things? I don't know. Maybe, it's probably the only one.
Right. There's some similarities, they do some of the similar things, and in transition, they're both completely unstoppable. There's nothing you can do with them.
Yeah. Basically, I think that is kind of a question. Like, should Giannis keep trying to, keep working on his foul shots, but should he continue trying to be a shooter?
Well,
at all? It's kind of, I don't know.
Man, my opinion on that is, I think the mid-range jumper, the 15-foot and in, I think that should be what he goes after, because people, no matter, even if Giannis starts to make some threes, they're still not going to come out and guard him, because in order to balance out, to make enough threes for it to, make sense for people to pay attention to him out there, he's got to shoot 38-40%. I just don't think that's ever. No, but people don't get into the league 6, 7, 8 years in and then become great 3-point shooters. So I think that mid-range, he's already you can see he's kind of got that Hakeem Olajuwon turnaround fadeaway thing that he can kind of make when it's within 10 feet. So I think that should be,
that, improved. And then he was making plays too. Milwaukee, you have to give them credit, because one of the best things they did was they're like, all right, stop this whole Giannis having him at the top of the key and initiating the offense, unless he's driving right to the basket. Like, give it to, Holiday or Middleton and let them kind of do stuff. And then if Giannis is out on the wing, don't necessarily shoot a three, make the right pass, and then move without the ball, which kind of he was already doing, but I think he kind of just played to his strengths more. And then it's kind of like, he was already a physically dominating athlete, but I guess just because he played to his strengths so much in the last few games of the finals, I think everybody's like, oh, okay, because that's what you're left with. That's the last thing you saw was him, him driving to the basket and just making the right play. So.
Yeah, no, and if you get, it turns into, as he gets more experience, he gets the ball below the free throw line, he's a threat to do anything. He's a threat to score. He's a threat to shoot the ball right from there.
Yeah.
He's a threat to pass the ball. Like, it's, rolling to the rim. Like, he's just got a million options. The sky's the limit. I think, it bothers me that last year people kept complaining about, Giannis not being able to get it done, which is this is the way sports media works. I get it. but it
Yeah.
just kind of blows me away that, you know, he goes from last year, he's the guy who can't get it done, to this year, he's the best player in the NBA. It's, you know, we have
Yeah.
there's no middle ground to the way we do things. He's either the best in the league or he's, you know, can't get it done,
Yeah.
which is, you know,
Yeah.
that's a
Which is kind
failure on the media's part.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's the whole rings culture thing where we basically, because that's the other thing I wanted to say. Like, you know, people have been saying, well, you know, like I heard Jason Whitlock say, well, you know, I think this kind of takes LeBron down a peg because Giannis didn't have to leave. You know, and I'm hearing other people say, well, it's, you know, it proves that you can stay there and win a championship. And I'm just like, hold on, okay. Nobody said that you can't stay and win a championship. I mean, no one's saying that. Okay, you can. I mean, you could stay there. You might not win a championship, or you might. You know, I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of funny to me. Like they're like, well, all these other guys stayed, and it's like, yeah, well, you know,
Yeah,
Jordan stayed.
there's more than one way to do it.
Yeah, right. Well, but you have to remember, like, even if you stay, you got to get breaks in order to win in order to win a championship, much less multiple. I mean, like Jordan stayed there. He got breaks. He gets Scottie Pippen. He gets, you know, Horace Grant. He gets Dennis Rodman. He gets Steve Kerr. He gets
You
the
get
best
Phil
coach of all
Jackson as the
time. You
coach.
know, yeah. You know, Kobe gets to the Lakers and he gets prime Shaq with Phil Jackson. You know, Magic. I mean, Magic goes to a team and then ends up playing with, like, you know, two other Hall of Famers. You know, Hakeem Olajuwon gets. I mean, you could say it's a break. Jordan leaves the sport. I mean, you know, that was kind of a break for everybody. Tim Duncan goes to San Antonio, and you know he gets to play with David Robinson, and then Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, who they draft in, like, you know, not even in the top of the draft. You know, so like now again they win championships, right? Garnett stayed in Minnesota for, you know, 10 years or something, and you know he didn't really get the breaks. So are you telling me that if he had stayed there his whole career and not won the title, like, you'd give him extra credit? Like, you know, that just seems kind of like, you know, Patrick Ewing stayed with New York like his whole career. Or even if you're not, are you going to give him more credit because he stayed? So that whole thing to me just gets kind of ridiculous. Like,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
that winning one title dramatically changes people's perception of you. You know,
yeah,
the multiple title thing, I mean, that's basically reserved for, you know, the handful of guys that have led teams to multiple titles. There's only, you know, you can count them on one hand. There's just not that many.
yeah. Well, then the other thing is, I just, you know, yeah, I just find it so funny. Like, logistically, LeBron would never have won in Cleveland if he hadn't left, because he leaves. They were bad. They get 2 draft picks. Or they get 3. Did they get 3 number 1 picks, or was it 2?
They got
Because
they
they got the
drafted
Kyrie Irving
Kyrie
pick,
Irving number one, and they drafted Anthony
Anthony
Bennett
Bennett.
number one, and Andrew Wiggins. Yes, they did get 3.
Yeah, so they get 3 number 1 picks. You know, one's Kyrie Irving, the other one turns into Kevin Love. So yeah, like, he wouldn't have been able to win unless he, you know, gotten those players. So, you know, and then it's like, oh, we're going to give Giannis all this credit for staying. We can't ignore the fact that there were all these injuries in this playoffs. I mean, they were down 2-0 to Brooklyn, and it looked like they were going to lose even without James Harden in there. So, like, you know, I mean, I just think at the end of the day, you just basically go, you know, Giannis has 1 title, you know, LeBron's got 4, you know, and it's kind of worth the same. I mean, or not. I'm not saying 1 title is worth 4, but I'm saying each title is a title. That's what it
Right.
is. Like, let's not, you know. And if a guy doesn't get a title, you have to look at all the context of everything before. You know, I'm not necessarily going to jump down your throat if you didn't win a title. If they're like, the thing with Chris Paul is, like, when did he have the best team? He's never had the best team. I mean, so if you have the best team and you lose, then it's like, okay, then I feel like we should criticize you because it feels like you should have gotten it done.
Yeah.
You know?
So here's my Chris Paul take is this. I think that Chris Paul has always had to be the best player on every team he's been on.
Yeah.
You know, he was the best player on the New Orleans team. When he went to the Clippers, he had to be the best player. And, you know, because Blake Griffin, good all-star player, but not a pantheon, change your franchise type of guy. And so there's, there's when you're 6'1", there's limitations. And,
Yeah.
unless you're, and Chris Paul is a good scorer, but he's not a great scorer. He's not a, Michael Jordan, James Harden level scorer, which makes it, makes it difficult when you have a 6-foot guy trying to take your team and be the best player. And on Phoenix, I don't think he was the best player, but he kind of had to be the best. When he was the best player, that's when they were their best.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. It was just hard for him to do it. I think the adjustment going from the Clippers to Houston for Chris Paul was that, you could kind of see it. It looked like to me, especially in the second year with Houston, that he was kind of at another point of his career. That, he wasn't going to be able to get you 25 or 30 every game. That was going to be really hard to do. And you see, he gets banged up, and he made it through the playoffs, but it was a struggle. So
He made it through, but he was injured a bunch.
Right.
I mean, he had the shoulder injury. He had his hand was injured. Then he gets COVID. He has to come back from that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to use that as an excuse, but I mean, to expect him to get through the playoffs without getting injured is kind of ridiculous because he's 6 foot tall. Like, if he's in there banging around with people, like,
most point guards have somebody else on their team that they're getting the ball to, that's helping them, that gives them a real chance to win it. John Stockton had Karl Malone. Isaiah Thomas, that Pistons team was really, really good. They had lots of good players on it. And you're right. Your argument about Chris Paul didn't really have the best team is a fair argument. They never really had the best team.
Yeah, and like what I'd say, so for instance, when LeBron lost when Miami lost to the Mavericks in 2011, I feel like most people think that LeBron had the best team and he lost, and he should get criticized for it. Because he didn't play that well. I mean, he had one game where he scored like 8 points. I mean, so, that's the thing where I think it's totally fair to criticize somebody. But, I wouldn't criticize, LeBron for losing to the Warriors, 3 out of 4 times. I mean, the team was just better, and he had injuries that on his own team that, were very difficult to overcome.
And they did manage to beat him once.
Yeah. And even that, I mean, Draymond Green gets suspended, Andrew Bogut gets injured, like, and they win game 7 when, it's tied at 89. And it's basically like, well, somebody's got to make a shot, and Kyrie made a shot, so, and then it's just, in terms of small players, I mean, Steph Curry's taller than Chris Paul, but I mean, how many breaks did Steph Curry get to win that first title? And again, he's got a title. I'm not taking it away from him, but I mean, they get to the finals, and you could tell the Warriors have never been there before. So they're trying to figure stuff out. And, then Kyrie Irving goes down, and Kevin Love was already out. So, and then they still get down 2-1. So, and then they're able to pull it out. But I mean, and then Steph Curry didn't get hurt that playoffs, like at all, which was a rarity throughout his career up to that point, because, part of the reason they were able to have that whole team together was because Steph Curry kept getting hurt. So he couldn't get as much money as he wanted. So they could keep the whole team together. So it's like I'm supposed to, I look at that and they go, he got all these breaks, but I'm supposed to say, I'm supposed to rip Chris Paul in comparison to that because Chris Paul didn't get those breaks, and I guess maybe people are maybe being harder on him because they feel like he did get some breaks this playoffs because, like, Anthony Davis goes down, Kawhi goes down. Yeah, right. But still, I mean, I just feel like over the course of the series against the Bucks, it was a really difficult matchup. I think that's part of the reason Chris Paul struggled. So,
yeah, I would definitely agree. So, any more takes on the playoffs? Anything
I'm trying to think.
Anything you wanted to get to?
Think. I think that was pretty much it. I mean, I do think it's kind of funny though, like, if think about it this way, what if Anthony Davis doesn't get hurt? I don't know what would have happened in the rest of the playoffs. But say Anthony Davis doesn't get hurt and the Lakers win that series, right?
Right.
What would people be saying? They'd be like, well, Chris Paul did a great job with his team. He goes to another team, they win, they get to the playoffs, and, of course they lose to a better team, but, whatever. And it almost feels like that would have been better than them losing in the finals. You know what I mean? Like I'm to the media, you know what I mean? Not to me, but I'm just saying, I feel it almost feels like people rip on you more for losing the finals than, oh, you just lost in the first round. Okay. Like, you know, I guess if it was unexpected that you make the finals, then people almost rip on you more that you lost, you know. So
Yeah, and this, this is the craziness of sports. Like the margins, this is how thin the margins are. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Between there's a small difference between Phoenix losing in the first round and going to the finals, and Milwaukee losing in the second round and winning the title. It
yeah,
just it's one of those, it's crazy. And but you get that one trophy, that one banner, you hang it up and it stays there forever.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think probably the media and the fans should probably uh some of their standards are kind of ridiculous, and it seems like the goalposts always shift, you know. So, and there's also just there's no like, I mean, like I said, like people criticize you for losing in the finals, and like almost like reaching the finals isn't an accomplishment. No, it's an accomplishment. You know, I know people want to rip on it like, oh, well, you didn't win the whole thing, so it doesn't matter. No, 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 no. If you make it all the way through all that to the finals, I mean, come on, that's an accomplishment. I'm gonna give you like, I'm gonna give like, looking back on Chris Paul's career, there's some, game 4 in the finals I'll criticize him for. Losing game 5, or no, 2-2, yeah, losing game 5 to Oklahoma City in 2014, where he gets the ball stolen from him by Westbrook. I mean, they were in control of the game. Yeah, I'll kind of criticize him for that. But beyond that, it's kind of like, the dude's 6 foot tall, am I going to criticize him for pulling his hamstring against the Warriors in 2018? Like, no. I mean, so again, there's things I could criticize him for, but at the same time, it's like, he's 6 foot tall. I think he's doing about as well as you could expect him to do, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, I just, again, like I said, I'm not really ready to rip him to shreds for not winning a championship, because it's like them pointing that 2-0 series thing. It's like, how good of a team was the Clippers when he was on it? Like,
Right.
like for instance, like we could rip on him for losing to Houston when they were up 3-1 in the semifinals in 2015, right? And it's like, okay, well, say they won that series, they would have had to play the Warriors. Like, would they have beaten the Warriors? I don't know. I mean, that's hypothetical, but like, so it's like, I don't know. I think people need to kind of slow down. So,
Yeah, I would agree. So are there any storylines, anything really interest you about next season? You want to see how it goes?
yeah. So look, that's a good, yeah. So looking ahead to next year, that's a good one. Uh, I think we'll see what happens next year, as far as particularly, I mean, if Brooklyn is healthy, then I'm picking them. I think maybe the Milwaukee gives them a better series than I would have thought at first, but I'll kind of take them. I mean, it's like, could Giannis make the finals again or win multiple titles? Possibly. I mean, it depends on, there's a variety of things it depends on. You got to get certain breaks, and I just think people need to slow down and, oh, this guy's going to win multiple titles. Maybe,
I think
but
I think the advantage Milwaukee has, though, is that they can still get better. They have room to get better, and they've been playing. Most of those guys have been playing together a while now. Like
that's fair.
Giannis has been playing with Middleton for 7-8 years. So I think they have room to where they can get better, and so that, I think,
That's fair. Yeah.
we have to kind of
Yeah.
look at
Well,
it
and
in
that's the
that
other thing. I don't
context.
want to overreact about Brooklyn. Outside of Brooklyn, I, I have a hard time seeing who's going to beat. Again, Philadelphia. We'll see what they do with Ben Simmons, because that could be interesting. Maybe they make a move and they kind of get everything working the way it needs to, and then maybe you can give Milwaukee a really good series. So, but it is still the Eastern Conference. Like, Atlanta. How much better is Atlanta going to get? Like, Trae Young will get better, but I don't know. And then the rest of it, I mean, Miami, no, Boston, they're going to have to make some kind of move. I mean, outside of that, it's kind of, I think it's maybe it's more interesting to see like, well, can they beat whoever comes out of the West? Because we don't really think it's going to be Phoenix again. If they have to play the Lakers or they have to play, the Clippers or Denver or,
Yeah. I'm interested to see how Brooklyn approaches next season. Do they come in ready to go, and do they really kind of take the regular season seriously and try to get the 1 seed, or do they just kind of take it easy and cruise? Because I think hopefully they've seen from what happened in the playoffs that they've got to work a lot of these things
yeah,
out, be healthy, get through the regular season, try to manage
yeah,
everything, but they've still got to, you got to achieve some level of chemistry. I think what happens with Philadelphia is a really interesting, wild card. If they, who knows? Do they make some kind of move? Do they improve their roster? What if they get Damian Lillard? What if, but yes, I do agree
yeah.
with you. I would peg Brooklyn as the favorite. Um, but I don't think Milwaukee's too far behind.
No, yeah, it's pretty close. They're like right there. Especially, I mean, Giannis is the most physically dominating player in the league. So, and he just scored 50 in a closeout game. Like, we don't need to go on about that. But I mean, I mean, think about that. In like 10 years, you're gonna go, oh yeah, that's right. Giannis scored 50 in Game 6. Like, I mean, and he wasn't shooting threes. It was a bunch of twos, and he took like he scored 50 on like 25 shots. Like,
It's what I mean. I think lost in all this is it's one of the best finals performances of all time. I mean,
yeah,
they told the guys who've scored 50 in the finals, and it's
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. So I mean, and then the West, we'll see. Like I'm, I feel like the last 2 or 3 years with LeBron, I've been like, all right, is this kind of not that he's going to retire, but it's like, is this kind of it for him being, one of the best players in the league? Like, is he going to, I don't know. He's smart. He can kind of figure stuff out how to affect games, but I don't know. I feel like next year if he has AD healthy, then that's kind of maybe that's the last realistic chance to win a championship. I don't know.
Yeah, and it comes down to what does the rest of the team kind of look like? Because a story came out about Kuzma and Schroeder not getting along, and there being
Yeah.
problems with the Lakers locker room, and LeBron not being happy with Anthony Davis. Does any of that stuff
Oh, really?
matter, or is that just they lost before they wanted, before they were expecting to, and there's some issues. So I think
Yeah.
they have a lot of things they got a lot of things they need to figure out.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think the only other thing was that, one of the things I'm certainly going to annoyed with in the NBA is they call championships chips. Can we stop coming up with different names for the same thing? Can we just, can we say championship or title? Do we need to come up with a new name for something, And now it's like, he had a 50-point game. He had a 50 piece. Like, what? Can we
Yeah,
just like,
if anybody out there has watched the Netflix series Last Chance U, they call the national championship a natty, and it's kind of like, wait a minute, what are we talking about? Like, and listen, I'm 42 years old now. I'm not keeping up with all what the young kids are saying. I get it, but yeah, we got to keep those things in line. But yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm
yeah.
excited. I'm really excited for next season because I think there's just this
Well, I
year,
think
having a year
it'll be
like
the most
this.
normal year we've had in 3 years.
Yeah,
So,
having what's happened so far sets up next season so well. The drama.
yeah,
Can
yeah,
Milwaukee do it again? Was that for real? Can Phoenix do it again? Was that for real? Or any of these teams, if they have their guys healthy, would they have done better? So I think this is what's great about sports, and especially the NBA, is it just gives you all of these things that to think
yeah,
about and to talk about.
yeah. So, all right. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I don't really have any other points I wanted to make. That was kind of all I wrote down. So,
So yeah, I mean, we're gonna, we're both big NBA fans. We'll probably talk about that a lot, but we're not opposed.
Yeah,
to
we got. I
talking
mean,
about
the next couple podcasts, we'll probably talk about free agency. Which is free agency, which is coming up. And then obviously we'll probably get into some NFL, but I don't think we want to talk about Aaron Rodgers because it looks like he's going back to Green Bay. So let's just
Yes, our
So I'll move
feeling
on.
on the Aaron Rodgers saga is when something happens, we'll talk about it. Until then,
yeah,
let's just wait and see because it's
we're
not
we're
as
not
if
we're not trying to fill up 24 hours of programming. We don't really need to get into. Yeah. So
All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed it, and
yeah, we'll have to come up with a name for this. So
yep. See you on the next one.
yeah.